We are halfway through the second season of the Overwatch League, with all of the teams having played half of their 28 regular season matches. So for today's video, I want to take a closer look at the overall league standings, and give my determination for each team's chances of reaching the end of season playoffs, or play-in bracket, as well as pointing out some interesting points about the standings in its current state. Looking at the standings after 2 stages and 14 games, there are some interesting things that we can see and take away from the rankings as they currently stand. One of the first things that comes to mind is that New York is still positioned above San Francisco, having lost fewer games, even though you'd find it difficult to find anyone who hasn't seen the Titans, or Shock, as easily being the top 2 teams in the league, almost in a bracket their own. To me personally, I'm also very surprised to find Shanghai so low in the standings, after 2 solid stages and very impressive recent performances. But it goes to show and emphasise the importance of map differential in determining playoff implications moving forward, with Seoul having a 9 map advantage over the Dragons, despite their equal record, suggesting that the Dynasty have had much more convincing victories and narrower defeats, and it's these sorts of details that we're paying close attention to over the coming stages. That said, I want to start by mentioning which teams I think are completely out of the running for any aspect of the playoff picture, and these are the Florida Mayhem, Washington Justice, and Houston Outlaws. The Mayhem and Justice have 3 wins between them, and especially in Stage 1, didn't look at all competitive in the majority of their series. They would need to finish 12th to have any chance of reaching the play-in bracket, and whilst their performances have improved, it is clear that both teams are in rebuild mode, with Florida's transition to a full Korean roster, as Washington continues to make their own dynamic changes to the team with recent pickups. This is not to say they have no chance whatsoever at competing for stage playoffs, perhaps in Stage 4, if they continue to make changes, but their current map differential and total number of wins just seems to be too big of a hill for both of these teams to overcome in time for the end of season playoffs, and I reckon it would be better for both of these teams to focus more on season 3 than having an unrealistic and drastic turnaround. Now the other team that I've added to this group is the Houston Outlaws. Despite their superior number of wins to the 2 teams below them, as well as having the same record as the LA Valiant, who I'll get on to in a minute. Of course their map differential is a major factor in being much worse than Valiant, although if they were able to make up the 4-game gap, this is something that could be addressed. However, unless this meta takes a significant shift towards DPS, I just don't see Houston being able to turn it around to realistically compete for a spot at 12. The Outlaws, unlike the teams below them, have made little to no effort to address obvious issues through trades, and this has cost them significantly so far this season. And from what I've seen so far, the only players I have any consistent confidence in are Muma and Dante. They've shown they can beat the worst teams in the league, but they struggle to compete with others, which is why I think their season is likely over. My next group of teams consists of those that I don't think have any real shot of making the automatic playoffs, but instead are vying to compete for seeding, or even just to qualify for the play-in playoff bracket. For anyone unaware, the playoff system is changing this year, with only the top 6 automatically qualifying, with those in the 7 to 12 positions having to go through another bracket for the final 2 places in the 8-team final end of season playoffs. The teams I have in this bracket: the LA Valiant, Paris Eternal, Guangzhou Charge, Chengdu Hunters, Shanghai Dragons, Boston Uprising, and Toronto Defiant. Although within this group, I would split these teams again, starting with those on the outside looking in. Now unlike Houston, the reason I think the Valiant has got a chance is because of their recent improvement and progress over the past stage, picking up 3 wins, and more importantly, showing an ability to compete against higher level of competition through their close losses to the Gladiators and Seoul. If this momentum continues over the next couple of stages, they have an outside chance. Paris meanwhile is the team I have the least faith in out of all of the teams here, having shown some of the most disappointing performances of anyone this season. But their recent narrow loss to Hangzhou, as well as the fact they've still managed to get 5 wins, leaves them with a sliver of a chance, but it's unlikely unless there are serious changes shown immediately. Chengdu and Guangzhou are in very strange places, and I find it hard to have strong opinions on where they'll end up. As I've always said with the Charge, they have the potential quality in their side to definitely make a push for the top 12 place, but it just hasn't seemed to come off yet. Whilst the Hunters are the ultimate wildcard, given their off-meta strategies that could see them sneak in, although I do worry they're becoming very predictable and easy to read that will penalise them increasingly this season. As for Shanghai, Boston and Toronto, I think they have a much more realistic chance of finding themselves inside the top 12, and potentially have a long shot chance of grabbing automatic playoff qualification. But for all 3 of these sides, it is their inconsistency this season, as well as map differential issues, that will need to be rectified as priorities if they want what are 3 very capable rosters to achieve their fullest potentials, successfully qualifying into the play-in bracket. I will now talk about which teams I think have the most likely chances of competing rather than having a guaranteed spot for one of the top 6 automatic places, and they are the Atlanta Reign, Seoul Dynasty, Hangzhou Spark, Philadelphia Fusion, Dallas Fuel, LA Gladiators, and London Spitfire. But just like my last group, I would separate these teams again into a group of wildcards, and then those with firmer control of their own destiny. The reason I've called the first group wildcards is because, despite their ability to be able to find themselves in an automatic playoff berth, they've given me enough doubts to not rule out they could even miss the playoffs altogether, even if it is unlikely. Atlanta, with their most recent wins over New York, just did enough for me to put them in this section, rather than alongside teams like Boston and Shanghai. The Reign have shown that, especially through their tank duo of Pokpo and Dako, they can even cause the best teams a lot of issues, and their solid map differential also assists in giving them a head start over other teams. But as we saw at the beginning of Stage 2, they can also bring out performances on par with some of the worst in the league, so this team has both the potential to go up and down in the rankings. Seoul and Philly have both, on balance, underperformed to expectations of them at the beginning of the season, but find themselves with their playoff futures still in their own hands, having shown some decent performances that have helped their map differentials, and again shown that they are more than capable of securing these higher ranking seeds. Yet this season has shown both of these teams struggle at different points, with a continuation of Fusion's poor form a real hurdle, and if Seoul has a repeat to the end of their inaugural season, they risk falling further than 12th and end up missing the season playoffs again. The Spark, meanwhile, are in a very precarious position, as despite their victories, their map differential is in a very, very poor state. A couple of losses could see them fall drastically, but equally, a solid run of form with victories akin to that against London and Seoul could sort out this issue and contest a spot at 6. Dallas and London, on the other hand, might look to be in great positions right now, with good win totals and map differentials, but I think this is mainly down to their ability to effectively beat weaker opponents. I don't think we'll see either drop out of playoff contention entirely, but unless their level of play can make a marked improvement against the better teams, they can find themselves falling just short of 6 at the end of the season, having had recent losses to a lot of teams that make up the immediate chasing pack. Finally, there's the Gladiators, who on balance I think is the strongest team out of those in this group. Since sorting out their communication issues that plagued them in Stage 1, they have looked like a very strong side that people have anticipated they'd be in the pre-season, with Decay increasingly showing off his talent and potential. As Stage 2 progressed, they did seem to be struggling to claim convincing victories like the teams above and around them. That was highlighted by their surprising loss to Boston at the end of last stage. Looking at their schedule moving forward, they have a lot of games against top teams coming up, so it'll be crucial that they do not slip up to weaker opponents again, otherwise they risk compromising an automatic slot. That now leaves 3 teams that I'm definitely confident have already booked their automatic playoff spots at the end of the season, and to no one's surprise it's the San Francisco Shock, New York Excelsior and Vancouver Titans. They've clearly been the best 3 teams in the league this season, and simply the arithmetic is heavily in their favour, with more victories and a higher map differential than those below them. It wouldn't come as a great surprise if their dominance at the top stutters a bit either in Stage 3 or 4, but I just don't see any of these sides suffering. It would have to be a monumental breakdown and run of defeats to threaten dropping them outside the top 6, which is why I have them here. And with that, we've reached the end of my mid-season look into the playoff race, and I hope you enjoyed. We're back with a couple more videos this week before my final exam, so please like, subscribe and follow me on Twitter for this continuing Overwatch League coverage and content.